Let's run through problem 2.4a. We're calculating a sustainable growth rate. This is a funny problem. I have to be honest with you. The reason it's a funny problem is because it's not super realistic. We're given just scattershot information and we have to play puzzle solver here. So normally you just look at financial statements and be able to get the information off financial statements. Here we're given just like bits and pieces, the odd ratio, and the idea is, are you clever enough to solve the puzzle that's been put in front of us? So let's see if we're clever enough to solve this puzzle. It requires some algebra, and algebra is not my strong suit. I've got to be honest with you, but I think we're going to get through it together. I hope so. Calculate the sustainable growth rate given the following information, and there's a bunch of ratios and information they've given us. Now let's remember what a sustainable growth rate is. It starts with ROE, return on equity, times B, which is our plowback ratio, divided by 1 minus ROE times B. That is our sustainable growth rate. Okay, so we've done that in previous problems, right? We've solved for the sustainable growth rate. That's the formula to do it. And we're given bits and pieces. We're basically given enough information to figure out B because we're given the dividends and the net income. So, all right, if we're paying $20,000 out of $30,000 in dividends, our dividend payout ratio is 66.67%. And that's the payout ratio. So how much are we plowing back into the company? Remember, B is the plowback, right? It's the amount of money that we're not paying out as dividends. Well, it's 33.33%. So that's our B in this formula. So, all right, we're already most of the way there. We got the B. The ROE is not easy. That's the problem in this question. If it's just finding out the B, okay, yeah, you kind of got to solve for it. But so B is 33.33%. We'll kind of keep that. You know what? I'm going to put that up here somewhere. B equals 33.33%. Okay, well, that'll come in handy much later. We now have to solve for return on equity. And return on equity is net income, which we have, divided by equity. So we just have to figure out what is our equity. That is the $1 million question here, and it's not so easy to get. To get there, you have to know these formulas. So our profit margin is net income divided by sales. This goes back to stuff we learned in chapter 1 when we did ratios. We looked at this ratio, and you have a ratio sheet you can refer back to. Capital intensity ratio is assets divided by sales. And debt to equity ratio is debt divided by equity. Okay, so we're just going to try to figure out the raw numbers here, and we'll work our way down from profit margin and try to figure out missing numbers. So let's start with profit margin. We know net income divided by sales equals 10%, 0.1. We also know our net income is 30 grand because it was given. So we can solve for sales, right? We know this is $30,000. So $30,000 divided by sales equals 0.1. If you rearrange, you go, okay, 30,000 divided by 0.1 equals sales. What you find is sales equals 300,000. It's just 30,000 divided by 0.1. 300,000. Okay, so maybe useful information, maybe not. We'll see. Well, in fact, it is useful information. I wouldn't have solved if it wasn't. We can use that in this next ratio where we know assets divided by sales is 0.85. So assets divided by, now we know our sales, 300,000 divided by 300,000 equals 0.85. So assets is 300,000 times 0.85. 300,000 times 0.85 means our total assets are $255,000. Okay, so again, a little bit of algebra and just like puzzle solving in this problem. Next, debt to equity ratio. Now, again, if you're doing this for the first time, you wouldn't know where to begin, I believe. But that's why we do these together. And so if you're faced with something like this, okay, you've got at least a prayer, right? Debt to equity ratio is 3.2. So, okay, we know we're trying to get down to equity, right? Because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for ROE, and we need the E to get to ROE. So we got to solve here for equity. Now we know debt plus equity equals the total assets. Assets equals liabilities or debt plus equity. So we know debt plus equity equals 255 because we just solved for assets. We also know debt divided by equity equals 3.2. Debt to equity ratio equals 3.2. I'm going to move this out a little bit just to sort of focus in on this part of the puzzle. And so we just got a little algebra puzzle to be solved here. Debt plus equity equals 255,000. Debt divided by equity equals 3.2. I'm going to isolate equity as a variable. So I'm going to say, actually, I'm going to isolate debt as a variable. Debt equals 3.2 times equity, right? I just moved the equity up. I'm going to plug this in and replace debt up there. So I'm going to say 3.2, because if debt equals 3.2 equity, I can just plug it into the formula. 3.2E plus E equals 255. 4.2E, so 3.2E plus 1E is 4.2E equals 255. Equity equals 255 divided by 4.2. Our equity equals 60714. Okay, now we can solve. We know our net income. Our net income was $30,000. Net income divided by equity equals ROE. So was it 30? Yeah, $30,000 divided by 60714 goes 0.494, 49.4% or 0.494. Okay, so now we have everything. We have our ROE, 0.494. We have our B, 0.333. Let's solve. I'll do this in different color ink because it's getting too much of the same ink. So let me actually move this over here. So our equity, or our ROE was 49.4%, 0.494 times B, which was 0.333, divided by 1 minus 0.494 times 0.333. And let's crunch the numbers. 0.494 times 0.3333333 is 0.1647. 0.1647 divided by 1 minus 0.1647. So divide by 0.8353 divided by 0.8353. And here is our answer after all that effort. 0.1647 divided by 0.8353 equals 19.72%. So a long journey there, but we have calculated our sustainable growth rate. Our sustainable growth rate is 19.72%. Really more of an algebra problem, really more of a puzzle that we've solved, but congratulations to us. We've solved it. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.